What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Epic 7 video. In this one, Valky and I are going to take you guys through our Season 9 Real-Time Arena tier list, and in it, we're going to include the Lone Crescent Bologna update, as well as the most recent balance patch, which included Ambitious Tywin, Mui. We might talk about those a little bit. But overall, remember, all these tier lists are subjective. Don't take too much stock in any individual tier list. Instead, just view our tier list as more of a guiding resource as to what we found effective, what we saw a lot during the season, especially in the middle to the end. And as always, if your favorite hero wasn't listed or ranked way lower, please don't get offended, guys. This is just our own personal opinion, and on top of that, it's probably better that your favorite heroes aren't seen as meta, because that gives you an edge playing outside of the box. But enough talking. Let's get to it. Sorry guys, real fast, two things I want to mention. Number one, if this video ends up helping you at all, this tier list, or if any of my past content on this channel have helped you, please consider hitting that subscribe button. We're really trying to get these numbers up. It would mean a lot to me. The second thing is, guys, I want to save y'all a lot of money. So I know I got a lot of free-to-plays watching, but those of you that were spending in Epic 7 or any other game that's available on the Amazon Appstore, you can save up to 20% off super easily. Let me take you through the steps. No strings attached, just save a ton of money here. So use the links in the description below to download the Amazon App Store. There's a lot of other games on there, but we're talking about Epic 7, right? We're going to go over the tier list together here for Season 9. So Epic 7 is what we'll be talking about. Get Epic 7 through the App Store. Purchase those Amazon coins. And as you can see from the bottom here, guys, you can save up to 10 all the way up to 20% off, literally off the bottom line. So whatever you want, those Valentine's packs, extra mystics, leafs, whatever it might be, just shave up to 20% off. It's really that simple. Get the Epic 7 app via the Amazon App Store and just start saving a ton of money. Help support me as well. Thanks for being cool with these shoutouts, guys, and let's get the tier list. What's going on, guys? I'm here with Valk. We got another tier list for y'all. This is end of season, new season, and we're going to kind of highlight the newly buffed and changed heroes as well as Lone Crescent Bologna. Valk, how you doing today, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I think after this last season, we saw a couple of really interesting meta shifts that people might not have expected. So definitely excited to hear to kind of share my thoughts on those.
All right, let's just straight get into it. I'm going to start with the hero names, guys, so y'all know who we're talking about. And then Valk and I will pick out a few heroes to talk about, as well as he's going to define where our tier list is. If you've seen our previous tier list, it's pretty much, you know, more of the same. So in the meta defining row, S tier row, our top one, we have Lua, Conquer Lilius, Apocalypse Ravi, Mediator Coeric, Angel of Light Angelica, Briarwitch Iceria, and Spectre Tenebria. Valk, what does the meta-defining role mean?
So meta-defining role is usually like, I don't know what I'm doing. If this hero is up, there is absolutely like you cannot get hurt from picking these heroes. These heroes are really strong. They do multiple jobs super well. And the best part about them is that they're super hard to punish, right? Epic 7 is a game about countering your opponent's game plan. So almost every hero has a way to be countered. And these heroes have very little counters. And if you can counter them, those units then in turn could be punished by you.
Right. And Valk, Apocalypse Ravi is one throughout the season. You know, she's always been one of the top dogs. 7 disasters, whatever they wanted to call them. But in recent times, at least in the beginning, people were saying she's falling off big time. And then near the end of the season, especially in that legend category, she's kind of seen a resurgence, no?
Yeah. So I think that's like there's two main contributing factors, right? Number one, she's a very strong hero, but she's not very like flashy or fun to play, right? She's not like a Politis or Caesarea where, you know, these heroes activate and then boom, a bunch of lights flash, right? It's more like you just kind of sit and you wait, and you press S1, and then when the time is right, you swing a big axe, and then you get one really satisfying turn. So that's one. And then number two is that the end of the season, despite what people might say during the season, like, oh, Cleave is really strong, Standard is dead. At the end of the season, there's always like this return to form where everybody is playing Standard because it's just consistent, right?
It's more safe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so when you're playing a Standard, you always have the Standard end game where you're like playing 2v2, 1v2, 1v3 even. And there's only one hero in the game that could win a 1v3 or even sometimes a 1v4. Right, and that's a Ravi, and to that end, she always comes back, right? And back in the old days of RTA, we have this thing that says like, you know, Ruel always comes back last day of RTA, and I think that spot's kind of been supplanted by a Ravi in recent days.
A Ravi, sure enough. I agree to all that. Okay, Val, let's move on to the next tier. We got the playstyle defining, the A, so this is our second tier. And left to right, we got the Bellion. Oh, quick note, guys. Valk and I roughly organized just the first two rows, the top two. Left to right, if you guys want to take stock into that. The rest, don't. It's not too important. Maybe just the first few in order. But yeah, it's kind of just a rough sort of placement here. But we got Bellion, Destina, special change ROL, Edward, Light Auden, Solitaria, Landy, Politis, Strays, Ran, Sage Vivian. Valk, what's her full name? Sylvan Sage
Sylvan
Vivian.
Sage Vivian.
Correct, yeah. Shu, Desert Jewel Bazaar. We got Pirate Captain Flan, Kisei, Karina, which Valk might take a few notes on. Me too. I actually really like this unit. Sage Ball, Zeo, Faithless Litica. Whoops, moved around. Crimson Armin, Fallen Cecilia, Rimuru, Eula, Sid, Wander Silk, Vildred, Tywin, which we might touch on too, recently buffed, and then Lionheart at the bottom. Val, quick note though, the speed imprints here, right, Sid? We kind of have some speed imprints at the very bottom of every row, and that's more of if you kind of fit that kind of aggro or like speedy style that Valk plays, right?
Yeah, so the reason why I like to include them on the tier list is because usually a lot of other streamers would just put them in a separate tier, but I think if you play a lot of speed imprints, you kind of have a idea of, okay, these ones are better, right? And I would say speed imprints would be something you play a lot, either if you are a cleaver or if you're an aggro player, which is like cleave, but maybe a little bit slower and more methodical, right? You have a little bit more pivotability. And these units where if you play fast, but especially if you're like me, but you're not that fast, right? These heroes are going to be able to define a lot of how you play, which is why I like to include them in the A tier.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so Valk, we went through the left to right. Let's talk first about, which one do we say? Let's take a quick note on Karina. Personally, I will not be ashamed to admit I really underrated her on the first preview we got around, but she was very important for me, at least, in that kind of anti-cleave, anti-aggro matchup. Valk, what do you think about her? She's the top Espa unit we're ranking, right?
Yeah, and she kind of came out of nowhere too, right? She was the last unit. She was a defense scaling unit, right? Usually these units aren't like crazy exciting, but because of her ability to CR push assault 50% when an ally gets dropped below 50%, this means on any given defense team, right, you're defending against a faster player, she has to be killed first.
Yeah.
So to that end, right, if you have another high priority target that must be killed, that means your Karina will activate. And if your opponent is playing cleaver aggro, which means their units usually don't go over 10k HP, she is going to be able to one-shot 1, 2, maybe even 3 or 4 units at the same time, and that's just ridiculous.
Well said. To add on to what Valk was saying, guys, when she is getting focused too, she's so deceptively tanky because we haven't seen a unit that like just gets to 2,800 to 3k defense, right, Valk? A lot of times I was so impressed with how much just like damage she could take and still be standing. But yeah, that's Karina in a nutshell, Valk. I think we wanted to quickly touch note on the ambitious Tywin. So I don't think Valk, the buff is just what, been a few days now? 2 days maybe?
Yeah, it's been like 2-3 days, but from what I've seen, he's been really, really strong. I think he's a really good versus like, what do you call those? Like soft crowd control, right? I think into things like Fairy Tale Tenebria or like like combo crowd control, you're still going to get overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
But what he's really good is, now if I'm playing Concrete Lilius in the first pick and I don't have an immunity provider, I'm gonna have to think, do I put up my vigor buff and attack down your team? Because then a Tywin activates, he's going to get a unconditional like defense break and stun across my team that cannot be resisted, right? I have to think about it a little. And if you can make Concrete Lilius hesitate to push her buttons, which not a lot of units in the game can do, I think you definitely deserve a spot on the list, somewhere A to B tier, and I think he's pretty strong right now.
Yeah,
at least right off the buff.
100% agreed, guys. On paper, right, the buffs are pretty crazy. We were all talking about it. A lot of people didn't think he needed that level buffs, but this is just kind of our rough placement. It's too early to tell, and I think Valk and I also were focusing a lot on this next lovely lady we're going to discuss here, so we haven't been able to really test him too much, but we're expecting him to be pretty dang good. All right, Valk, you ready to go to the strong rolls, our B tier here? Let me go left to right real quick, and then you'll define what this means. But we got the Lone Crescent Bologna, which we'll definitely talk about. Zahak, Maid Chloe, Milim. And speaking of Milim and Rimu, guys, I'm really hoping that the Slime collab comes back for y'all that missed out on these two, because they're still very good. Personal preference, I actually think I would rate Milim higher up, but Valk was mentioning. Valk, you want to just quickly talk about Rimuru and why we put him up a little bit higher?
So the reason why Rimuru kind of had a little bit of a resurgence, right? And you might notice in the same tier, Leica is suddenly now in B tier from a lot of people's tier list down from S tier, right? And Rimuru was largely responsible for why Leica is no longer considered a top tier support slash initiator, mainly because Leica being on Guiding Light If she S3s, it activates Rimuru. If she S2s, it gives her ally attack up, then attack, which activates Rimuru. So Rimuru is actually a really, really hard counter to Leica. And I would say a lot of people who were very contingent on Leica holding that legend spot, holding that maybe like their Emperor spot, kind of got smacked down all the way by a lot of people who just started picking Rimuru again. And Rimuru overall, because of Leica, right, a lot more units started running immunity set. Rimuru is once again really strong.
Right, and that's a big part of it, the immunity set. So Rimuru's a unit, well, where he'll climb or go down depending on how your opponents are going to be gearing, depending on what kind of tech you want to bring, right, Valk? So he's one that'll you'll probably see shift a lot compared to other people's tier lists. Okay, but where were we at? We were at Leica. We got Para here. Arya, Remnant Violet, Senya, Alencia, Celine, Little Queen Charlotte, Top Model Lulika, Dark Corvus, DDR, Death Dealer Ray, Operator Cigarette, Archie Mercedes, DN, Troublemaker Crozet, Special Change Carrot, Designer Lilibet. This is it Summer Iceria, Valk? I always forget. Summertime Iceria, Fairytale Tenebria, Eaton. We got the SC Raz, Amelia, Ida, Watcher Shuri, Kayron, and then Holiday Euphine. So, Valk, I think a lot of people watching, they're going to want to hear our thoughts on Lone Crescent Bologna. Why don't you take the floor? Oh, actually, do you want to talk about the strong rules real quick, the defined?
Oh, yeah. So strong rules to me are heroes that if you don't have them, it's not the end of the world, right? So, for example, like playstyle defining, if I don't have Karina or Sage Ball, I'm going to have a really hard time playing against like aggro or cleave. If I don't have Ed or Destina, for example, I might have a little bit of a harder time versus like debuffs. So you can think about it that way. Anything B tier and below, if you didn't have them, you probably wouldn't feel too bad about the state of your account. I would say anything like A tier or above is considered must have if they fit in your playstyle. B and below, not an absolute must have. But Bologna comes out like pretty close to being the top of that, because I don't think she's a must-have, but numerically, she's a very strong hero. She does ridiculous damage, right? With a Vigor buff, she becomes absolutely tanky as well, and being a warrior, she can run Sigurd Scythe, which makes her really, 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 really hard to kill. But the reason why I don't think she's a must-have is because she has her own fair share of hard counters, especially in either the same tier or even a tier above, right? If you have a hard counter that's a tier above you, your hero becomes really hard to pick, right? And those hard counters are Roanna, Lionheart Sermia, Little Queen Charlotte, and Aiden. Yep. And to that end, she can't come out too early in a draft, but in a draft where she is good, she looks like a superstar.
Well said. Took the words right out of my mouth. I have the same exact thoughts, guys. And Valk and I actually didn't even talk about this together. We just kind of came to the same conclusion. Just to add on to everything he said, Bologna stat line, that's the major thing that makes it really good, but no built-in mitigation. And on top of that, guys, right, she doesn't bring anything unique to the table like Valk was mentioning with a playstyle defining. So not a must pull in that regard. If you don't get her, there's you know, you're not going to be missing out on like something super unique. But at the same time, boys, this strong rules tier, if you make it on this list, right, Valk, this middle part, these are very good units in the grand scheme of Epic 7, especially for higher level RTA. So don't knock the B tier row. They're all very powerful. They just might be missing that unique mechanic or something, you know, like he was saying, where you might be in trouble if you don't have access to that unit. But Valk, we ready to move on from there?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, getting here closer to the end, we got the strong niche role. Let me say the heroes real quick. We got Spirit Eye Celine, Rowanna, Mui, who we might touch on a little bit here, Euphine, Commander Pavel. We got just Kowarik, right? I wanted to say Fire Hand guy. Pavel, Ruel, Violet, Charlotte. We got Ning Ning, Winter, Melissa, the especially changed Jenna, Last Rider Crow. This is Roy Mustang, SC Pillis. We got Mercedes, and guys, this is just the skin. We got Rem, Seaside Bologna, Closer Charles, Assassin Sid, Bloodblade Karen. This is Bihu, Axe God. His full name, though, Valk, is Church of Axe Illyros. Is that the special change one, too? He's got a long name. Chaos Sect Axe?
Chaos Sect Axe, yeah.
And then I think the non-special change is something Church Sect. Anyways, we got Flan here. We got Crow, Mursa, Assassin Coley, says Arbiter Vildred, and then her name is
All-Rounder Wanda.
All-Rounder Wanda, yeah. Okay. All right, Val, take us through the strong niche definition.
Strong niche heroes, I would say they have generally like 2 to 3 good like roles that they can fill on a team. So, for example, if you're not getting hard bursted by single target cleave, right? You have to tank down through AOE. A lot of times, a Seaside Bellona will still be pretty good in that role. Right. On top of that, she can also punish like maybe heavy AOE or fire units. Right. She kind of does 2 to 3 things. Rollana, same thing. Right. She punishes counterattack, extra attacks, and dual attacks. So they can do a lot of things, but if you pick them too early, they have a lot of weaknesses that can be exploited. Arbiter Vildred good for that as well. Right. He can counter a lot of cleaves that don't hinge on extra turns. Right. So if they don't extra turn on you, they kill him, and then he comes back, drops a big AOE on them. But if they have extra turns, then, you can't pick them too early, right? There's a lot of ways to punish these heroes.
Yeah. Niche definitely for a reason. And Valk, you want to take a quick note on the Mui buffs that just happened?
Yeah, so this is going to be something that requires more testing. But as far as I can see, I think Mui definitely is a really strong hero, right? 2 buff strip into an extra turn, into attack up for your whole team, into a dual attack buff for your highest attack carry, I think is ridiculously strong for an opener. But, right, the caveat here is she is not that fast for one, and 2, not a ranger, so no guiding light access to her, which means she's weak to stuff like Zeo, a Sid. So she kind of can be assassinated as an opener, right? Because she's not too fast. So there's definitely a lot of weaknesses in here. But for those like speed demon players, they're going to be able to take advantage of what she can bring to the table.
Yeah, and a lot of people were saying they were happy. Probably one of the few things they were happy about with the last balance patch. But yeah, guys, that is the Mui. We'll see further testing. It's still very, very new, like we keep saying. All right, let's wrap it up here with the weak niche row. Valk, we got the Elfelt, Summer Break Charlotte, Christy, Dizzy, Luna, Ludwig, Batcat Armin. This is Astromancer Elena, the new Furious, which his name, fuck, was it like, what was his name? Is it Marston? Peacemaker Furious. We got Acades, Giselle, Challenger Dominial. This is Special Change Montmorency, Judge Kisei, Hua Young, Arunka, Fire Ravi. We got Tempest Soren, Sinful Angelica, Elena, Silverblade Arminta, Special Specimen says, excuse me, and the Great Mortelix. Now, Valk, a lot of these units we kind of just threw up there. Guys, you could pretty much just add whoever you want in here, and they'll probably be okay as long as they're not completely terrible. But yeah, this was more of just like, this is kind of the bottom of the barrel. Some of these units y'all might rate way higher. Valk, any thoughts on just the weak niche role in general?
Yeah, so when I say weak niche, right, I don't mean like these heroes are weak. I mean, they probably do one job really well. They might even do a second job kind of okay. A pretty good example of that being something like T-Surin, right? T-Surin can anti-AoE pretty well, especially a lot of tank down players. But outside of that, she kind of will just die to anything that has like fixed damage, extra damage, or like you can detonate on her without crossing her cleanse threshold, and she kind of just pops like a grape, right? So very exploitable weaknesses. Another pretty interesting unit was Ludwig, who was really strong back when Leica was a high tier unit. But with Leica falling, Ludwig kind of lost one of his main initiators. So to that end, Ludwig kind of fell as well. But these are basically anything that could be played. You could toss a number of these units up here, right? I know some people play Ervelyn, some people play Green Armin. Even to some degree Blue Dominion, right? But it's just to give you an idea that, units that as long as you give them one role and you draft them to perform that one role, they'll do okay.
Right. So I think Green Armin and Blue Dominion were great examples of ones that are really good. But on top of that, guys, there's probably a bunch of y'all watching right now that have your kind of niche character that you do really well. And I love to kind of see that out of the box kind of, maybe some people might call it cheese, but I think it's just that kind of niche role that does well for you, but it's not for a general purpose list. And so we would put them here at the bottom, but don't take too much stock into that. And I think, Valk, that about wraps it up, man. Anything else? Last words?
Yeah, no, that's it from me. Thank you for having me. It's always been a really good time just kind of talking about the game and, figuring out what's what with the community.
Of course. Guys, always a pleasure for you. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you check out Valk, his YouTube and his Twitch. The dude's been killing it, and we'll catch you all, I guess, on the next tier list, right, Valk?
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great one, guys.
Peace out, y'all.
See ya.